Okay, I have a vehicle here, a space vehicle, using magnetic field. Basically, I don't know if you realize, but in rockets in space, they work differently than on Earth. On Earth, rockets can actually thrust themselves against air molecules and therefore creating propulsion. In space, you don't have air, you have no ground, you have no wall to grasp, to push against. So in space, the gases of the rocket are actually thrusted backwards on the back at high velocity. So basically, the layers of gas or mass, basically the mass, which is the gas, are thrusted from one layer to the other. So basically, it's like climbing a ladder that's fallen, but eventually you climb up. So even though it's fallen, free falling, you can still climb up the ladder. Uh, so that's the way the rockets work. So you have to have something to hold on to propel forward, whether it be the gas layer on top of another gas layer on top of another gas layer being pushed to the back at high velocity, or either gas or mass, uh, uh, solid mass. So like I said, those two options, which is the gas mass, which is rocket fuel, or solid mass and kinetic energy concepts, or another way to actually propel forward is creating a magnetic field, which we could do that. The Earth creates its own magnetic field and protects us from solar radiation. Also, we could create a magnetic field in all kinds of stuff, even in small, let's say, engines, like like your car alternator. Your car alternator is basically a high rotation of magnets that rotate around copper, and that creates a magnetic field and electrical current through the copper. But if you know this, that actually copper it has a braking force. In other words, it slows down every time, so that's why it creates electricity. So let's say you have a copper tube pipe and you drop a magnet, the magnet will slow down half the speed of its velocity. So there's friction. How should I say? There's a copper in and magnets. Actually, you could slow it down by half the speed in a tube in a copper pipe. So there's a way to grasp the magnetic field and get a foothold and use that as propulsion. So here we have two generators that create magnetic field. This is creating a magnetic field here, and this is creating a magnetic field here. Then you have a rotating high velocity, and you can see that these are more or less like copper planks, just like a boat. Your boat, you have you can row your boat using the planks. These right here to move forward. You're on the water. In space, you don't have anything to hold on, so you have magnetic field. Then you can row this a high velocity, and you can push it back propulsion-wise. So you can use magnetic field as propulsion, but you still need copper, because copper actually is affected by magnetic field. You have a point of contact, just like when you have a copper pipe, you drop a magnet, it is slowed down by half the speed. So there's actually the copper actually grasps to a certain percentage, grasp the magnetic field itself, so they can actually move forward. In space, you have nothing, no air, no nothing. It's a zero gravity, so you're actually floating there, and you can't push against anything. But if you have magnetic field, you can push against that. So you have the magnetic field, and then you got rowing your spacecraft using copper ends, like just like a boat. You're rowing, but this is spinning at high velocity. So basically, you're moving the spacecraft thrust back, and then you go forward. This is just a concept. Basically, you can have other kinds of copper propulsion devices. This is just a a concept that using copper against magnetic field will propel forward, creating thrust. So this is just a simple illustration, but obviously you could have a larger concept engine where you create magnetic fields and you have copper propelling, pushing against the magnetic fields to go forward. Like I said, in space you have zero gravity, nothing. So if you can grasp a magnetic field, you have something to grasp to, then you could go forward in propulsion. So this is my invention concept of using magnetic fields to row a craft on top of a magnetic field. Then you have something to grasp in space where you have nothing. Now you have a magnetic field to grasp, and we know that copper grasps a magnetic field, like in a copper pipe. They grasp the magnetic field and it can slow down by half the speed. So therefore, you do have the ability to grasp a magnetic field using copper or other materials similar. So you can row that spacecraft forward. This is just a concept, and if it's just a simplicity, obviously more advanced vehicles using magnetic fields and copper concepts to row a craft on top of a magnetic field. And in Earth, you will need actually, in some areas, you will need these generators because there's already Earth's magnetic field, but you can still row on top of it, but you can create your own magnetic field. Right now there's a drawing board, I believe. I heard somewhere they were thinking about putting these generators on Mars, on the outside, like satellites that produce these magnetic fields to protect the Martian landscape for astronauts when they land. In theory, these satellites can create magnetic fields to protect the astronauts when they're on Mars. So if they can do that, they can definitely create engines that create magnetic fields. These engines can create the magnetic fields, and you just have just roll on top of the magnetic fields using copper or similar material that's able to grasp the magnetic fields itself. Just like the your car alternator, it grasps the magnetic fields of the magnets as it rotates, and it creates electrical current. In this case, you also have the ability to recycle some of this magnetic field, because if it's the copper, you can introduce electrical current back into the vehicle. So you can still recycle some of this magnetic field back into the spacecraft. It is just a concept. So like any other concepts, it has to be experimented on. But we know for a fact that copper interacts with the magnetic field. That's why we have all kinds of engines and power tools, and copper does interact with magnetic fields, and we could use that in space just to create magnetic fields, and then we could have copper interact with it, and then we have a form of grasping the magnetic field, and then we could thrust, just the way rockets work. Rockets, they interact with layers of gas over layers and layers, and use as propulsion on zero gravity. Same with in space, we could use magnetic fields, and we can have copper grasp the magnetic fields, and we use as a thrust a propulsion concept. So there you go, folks. This is a rowing spacecraft on top of magnetic field concept by Megatron inventors. You guys have a good one.